Hello! Today I'm going to be taking this radio case from 1933 and transforming it into a cover for my Bluetooth speaker. According to the internet research I can do, this is a Philco Model 54C from 1933, original selling price of $25. As you can see here, it is in incredibly rough shape. I found it at a estate sale for $2. It was 50% off day, so ignore the $4 stickers. But as you can see, the veneer has a lot of chips, but the reason I picked it up was because I loved the shape and the frame. Most of the veneer with the patterns is still in decent enough condition, and the, I don't know what it's called, the dial frames in the background are still in pretty good shape. The inside is absolutely disgusting. The cloth is falling apart, the felt padding is disintegrating, it is taped and glued and disgusting, so we're going to clean it up first thing. First, I'm going to remove all of the $4 stickers. There's a lot of them. They really wanted to sell this at $4. Didn't happen, I got it for $2. Love a discount. Next, I'm going to disassemble this. Luckily, the bottom comes right off, presumably to change the tubes or the wires or whatever the radio needed, and there's another $4 sticker right there. But all I'm going to do is unscrew the bottom and take it off so I can get easier access to clean out the inside. Next, I'm going to remove these tacks down here that are keeping the cloth on. And I'm trying to be as gentle as I can with this. The cloth, obviously, I'm going to get rid of, but I don't know how I want to assemble this again and use the tacks. There's also a lot of staples here that I'm getting out just with a flathead screwdriver. And right here with those dial markers, I'm being incredibly careful around them because I don't want to snap those. Those look original. As you can see here, I want to try and gently clean them up so I can hopefully put them back in. For the staples that the screwdriver can't get, I'm just using some pliers to pull those out. I'm using these really delicate pliers for these tiny, tiny little pinhead nails that I'm assuming are original on the other plate. And I'm just prying those up to make sure, again, I keep these, I think they're made out of an old form of plastic. And some of the nails are stuck in there, so I'm just pressing them out very carefully to remove them. Next, I'm giving a very quick wipe down with a damp paper towel to get the really bad, already coming off stuff off of this. So gross. Just, some of that initial dirt, grime, a few spider webs. Get the first layer off. And I was really worried about how to remove this kind of disintegrating cloth felt base, but luckily I noticed that it was just on a piece of veneer, and I was able to slide my large pliers underneath it and gently pry it up to see what was underneath. And luckily it pried up all in one lovely piece, so I didn't have to try and scrape this out. I was really worried about having to sand it down, or I tried it actually before I realized this could come up to scrape it up with like a what's it called? Like a spatula, basically. But luckily, it popped right off. We've got this decent wood underneath, so I'm just going to clean this up and leave it as is, and throw this away because it is disgusting. Now there's the really fine grooves in here where the top sits into the base, so I'm just vacuuming that out. And because it is a little groove, I'm using a toothpick to kind of dig in there and get that, felt fabric material out. So I'm just digging it in with a toothpick, getting it up, and then I will vacuum those away. Next, once I did my initial clean, I'm just doing a quick light sand with some 180 sandpaper. I want to get that glue residue off as much as I can. It doesn't really impact the piece too much. I just want a clean base for when I put everything back together. I'm also taking an incredibly light sand just to these front bars where it's really flaking off. I don't want to sand where the veneer is in the large sections because that looks okay, but these little bars in the middle, those are flaking away, so I'm just taking some sandpaper to that so it doesn't continue to flake. For all of the grooves, I am just using a slightly damp Q-tip to get deep in there and get that, 90 years of dust out. I don't think this was kept in the best house or the best condition. I actually got it at like a workshop estate sale. So basically it was 3 rooms of just radio parts. For these slightly smaller grooves, the Q-tip doesn't quite get to the bottom. So I'm doing the best I can. And then I went on Amazon and I found these lovely little sponge detail Q-tippy cleaners that have a really fine tip on it that just get right down in there. And again, I'm just using some water with just the tiniest bit of soap that I sprayed in there. And I'm going through the backside as well, just so I can make sure I get all the angles, all the corners, all the grooves. So for this peeling veneer, because I love the original veneer, I just used some markers, furniture markers, to help fill in the stain. As you can see, I'm kind of testing the colors down at the bottom where it meets the base and it's never going to be seen again to see what kind of colors there are and where I can match. One thing I noticed while doing this is when in doubt of a color match, I went darker. Because this has kind of the leopardy burl pattern, it was much easier to fade in a darker color than a slightly lighter color. It just seemed to make it a little more natural for me. And I am trying to follow the patterns here. As you can see, it's striped and dotted along that border. And again, this was, $2. I'm playing with it. I'm seeing what works. I'm having fun. Something this cheap, even though I love the shape and everything, it's a great kind of practice piece. I've never used these markers before. I've never really refinished something with this much veneer. So I'm just doing the best I can and trying to make it look natural. If something doesn't look right, like that one was a little too light, I swap to the next darker color, try to make that muddled pattern. Tortoiseshell, that's what it's called, like kind of a tortoiseshell pattern. And again, doing the best I can, but I think it's looking all right. For these center bars, I'm just doing a straight line of dark color again, blend it in, make it look the most natural. Those pieces of veneer that didn't flake off when I sanded, again, because it's that mottled tortoiseshell pattern, who's to see? Who's to tell? It's just going to add to that, mottled pattern. So here's the finished look. I let it dry for a day and then I'm using some Restore Finish to try and clean up around the center windows there and all over. I'm letting that dry while I take out these furniture pads on the bottom of the piece. These are little felt inserts, like we have, pads for the bottom of our pieces today so we don't scratch our furniture. They apparently had those in the past. Who knew? They are drilled in and just felt plugs that pop right out. So I'm just using my favorite long pliers for this to insert and pry them out. And if you're wondering why I'm taking it out, look at the dust flying out of this section. I slowed it down so you can see the puff. This is why I'm removing these. So for the plastic dial backings, I don't know what they're called. I'm just using a very light touch on a paper towel to see how sturdily they're made with some water. Turns out they're pretty good. Nothing's peeling off. So I just went over it to clean it up. I don't want to put anything on it because I didn't know how the plastic would react to, chemicals or varnish or anything else. So for the knobs, I picked up these actual reproduction knobs online. They were $10 a piece. But I don't want to, permanently install them or glue them. So I made this simple little wood piece that I can drill into and attach the knob to. Because, again, I don't want to make it permanent. I don't want to ruin this if I want to change it later. I found these dowels that are the perfect size for these knobs to hold them in, and I'm just going to drill a hole into this wood and use it to attach the knobs. So I wanted to make sure I measured the width and the height, account for the base since the base is currently missing, and then just drill these 2 pieces of wood in. I did countersink these so that the screws wouldn't stick out the bottom. So to do that, I just drilled a little pilot hole and then switched to a larger bit that was the size of the head of my screw, so that when I drilled down, the screw could sink down into the wood and hold up those 2 side pieces. You can buy actual countersink drill bits, but I didn't want to buy too much else that I already bought for this project. But this way your screws aren't sticking out and making it wobbly. They're keeping that flat wood. To reattach the plastic dial pieces, I'm just using some newer tacks, making sure that the tacks don't go through the wood. The original nails kind of poked through the other side, or maybe they weren't original and the replacements poked through the other side. So I was measuring back there. So once I've attached those with the tacks, I'm also putting up this fabric that I picked up also online. It is actual radio fabric for speakers. I'm taping it in for now because I think it blends in a little too much and I want something maybe a little more vibrant, maybe a little more present. I'm going to live with it for a bit. But technically you are supposed to glue it in, but for now I'm taping it to see how I like it. I'm reattaching the base and going to screw everything back together so that I can slide my wood piece back in and put the knobs on. So once I've got the fit and the height, I'm just gonna drill right through and mark where I need the knobs to go to fit the dowels and those knobs. I did do a test run for the dowels to make sure it was removable, but also still a tight fit. So that's what I'm doing here, is just finding the perfect drill bit, because I don't know, when I hold up something to a drill bit and the screw, I can never get it right on the first try, and I didn't want to mess it up. So I did some practicing to find the actual bit that worked right for the dowels. As you can see, tight fit, but removable. Once I have my drill bit, I'm just going to drill through right here, just a little bit so I have my marker. Then I'm going to take it off, lay it down so I can actually drill through. Once I have it back in place, again, I'm not using any glue or anything. I'm just going to pop the dowel back in with my knob, dust everything off, and take a look at it. I should put a finish on it, or a wax or a varnish, but since it doesn't really hit the sun, as you can see, you can't really see those flaws in the finish or the varnish, and I do want to wait to see what it looks like as it continues, and if I want to change the fabric, all that good stuff. I just popped my Bluetooth speaker right behind it. I don't turn it on every day, so it's not a big deal for me to leave it in this kind of awkward get in, get out place. You could also always, have it plugged in if you can run a cord back to wherever you're keeping this. But this is the finished product. I think it looks so much better than the original. I'm still debating changing the fabric, but I am happy with this, and it was a very fun several days of off and on work. So I highly recommend finding a cool, interesting piece like this antique radio or just anything else that you can turn into a cover for your Bluetooth speaker to just make it a little more special and a little more fun in your room. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this inspired you to do something creative yourself.